So this will be my class presentation. It is by me, Drew Moser. This presentation is going to be over some of the material we went over this semester in class. And after reading some of the short stories, I've come to the conclusion that African Americans had it worse off in education and in economical situations. And this has caused issues in other areas of life as well. And it can be seen as a common theme in a lot of African American literature. I would like to, especially highlight Toni Morrison's story, Recitative, and Alice Walker's story, Everyday Use. I think both of these stories have characters and issues in it that highlight these two themes greatly. So the first story, Recitative, it was published in 1983. It is a short story fiction, and it is basically revolving around two girls who live in an orphanage, and they bond rather quickly as they are picked on by older girls, and they also have very similar educational mindsets, as they're receiving F's in class and they're bonding over that. Um, and these girls, they go on as friends and they have their ups and downs. The one big incident that is kind of the center of the story is when the two girls were talking about whether or not they kicked another girl named Maggie, and they were arguing, whether someone had kicked a black girl, and that was kind of the whole argument. And the story goes years down the line, and the two keep meeting, and they keep getting into it with one another over the incident. And finally, at the end of the story, they make up, and they realize the story was stupid pretty much the whole time, and someone was in the wrong. But economic disparity in this story is when both kids, have their mom come visit the orphanage for lunch, and they bring their lunches to the daughters, and Roberta's mom basically brings a feast. There's a quote right here on the slide, and it's basically more food than she probably needs to eat or will eat. And Twyla's mom unfortunately didn't bring anything, so they just had jelly beans. And you know, sad to say, but a lot of African Americans, were not as well off as white Americans at this time, and it was harder for them to afford some things. So it's just something sad to see here, and it just highlights the issues that African Americans had. Then in the educational inequalities, this is when the girls are debating whether or not school should be segregated or desegregated, and regardless of who said what, this is just something that's sad to me personally, as every kid, no matter the race, where they're from, should have equal experience, treatment, and opportunities. I think Toni does a great job of getting the point across that these these 2 points that she's brought up are common themes that African Americans are deal with, and that she has seen, and it's just sad. Next story would be Everyday Use, and that was published in 1973. It is another short story fiction as well. And so this story is basically about a mom and her two daughters. The mom goes by Mama, and the daughters are Dee and Maggie. Dee being the older, and younger is Maggie. Um, and so the story starts off with Mama basically describing life and how Maggie and them had a house fire, and Maggie was burned, and then they raised enough money for Dee to go to school. And Dee will come back every once in a while, but when she does, it makes people feel uncomfortable because she's trying to kind of force education on them and talk about how she's living this whole new world. And this story goes on about how she's coming home one day because she's trying to get a couple things from home, and this actually makes Maggie and Mama upset, and they exchange words, and they ended up parting ways at the end. So for the educational inequalities here, Dee went to school. She's had a good education. Mama went to school till the second grade, so that's not that much at all. And then Maggie can read, but it's not very well. And so this time when Dee comes home from school, she tells her mom that she's lost her sense of heritage, and she's changed her name to a more African name to oppose those who suppressed them. And her mom was basically like, we named you after our aunt. Like, there's a lot of heritage within our family and what we've done here in America. And she was really upset by that because she changed because she went off to go get an education and coming back with all these ideas. And as I was saying, Dee's coming. She's going off and learning education and coming back and bringing new things back to Maggie and Mama. But Maggie and Mama only know the world they've lived in, so this is all new to them, and it makes them uncomfortable. They feel uncomfortable around Dee. They feel like Dee's kind of bossy, really forcing education on them. And although Dee has gotten education, I think that like this is also a division that a lot of people go through, especially African Americans. When people did start going off to school, not everyone could afford it, and not everyone could even afford a good education either. So when people are coming back and talking to their family members, of course their other family members are going to feel a little alienated that they don't understand this, or maybe that they're not going to school. So I think this creates just a big division. Um, Once people finally are going to school, they still aren't getting the same opportunity and the same chances, and it's just it's not what you want. So basically, that's my presentation. I think that these two authors have done a phenomenal job when it comes to discussing educational inequalities and economic disparities. Both stories, Recitative and Everyday Use, have issues in them that highlight these, and I think that educational inequalities and economic disparities are a major theme in African American literature.